As you heard earlier, my name is Andy. Been here a while. I'm just kind of part of the furniture at this point with Conquest. This is my first time ever actually getting up and speaking, though. So that's exciting. So, I've seen this done before, I'm going to copy it. I will give the crowd 3 questions. Anyone want? No one? Alright, go ahead.
What's your social security number?
Classified.
Have the Citronella bands actually worked?
Kinda.
How did you come to Conquest, and how did you know Christ, and how did you get to know Christ?
Well, that's what this is all for.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
That's the whole point why he's up.
Yeah. So, a little bit about me. I grew up about an hour north of Spooner, about 2 hours north of here, in a little town called South Range. It's kind of by Superior, but out in the middle of nowhere. Ash can attest, I drove her out to my childhood home, and she thought I was taking her out in the woods to kill her in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
So, grew up that way. It's 20 minutes from literally anything. I mean, it's just a house and just road with rural houses out there.
Your guys' house?
Where I used to live
Oh.
when I was very young. My parents divorced when I was about 9 or 10. It was a pretty messy divorce. So that kind of shook things up for me. My only real church experience before coming to Christ was just down the road, because what else is in the middle of nowhere, but half a mile down the road, there's a church. It was down a hill, there's a creek, and we went up to the creek, and then up the hill there's a church. And I didn't really know what it was, so I started asking my parents questions, because it was always just there, and every now and again people would be there. And then they let me go a couple times, and I couldn't tell you anything about it, other than I had to put the little bit of money into the plate. All I remember, that was ingrained into me. I think I went maybe twice, I don't know. So I didn't get much out of that. And then I had one church experience. I was also very young. My aunt, when I was staying with her for a week, brought me and my brother and her kids to church. And we went to Sunday school, and I don't remember what we did. So that's really it. Now, does anyone want to take a guess at what I really believed once I kind of formed my beliefs as a teenager about God and religion and what we are here for and all that?
Does not exist.
Yes, I was an atheist. Very, very hardcore atheist. I had a friend from high school message me the other day, and who knew me during high school when I came to Christ, and he texted me, he's like, hey, are you still a Christian, or are you back to being a hardcore atheist? Actual words. So, you know, I was very hardcore. I strongly believed in the Big Bang, evolution, you know, all of that, and I would fight people on that 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. Okay. So, I've always done that for a long time, and I didn't think that I needed anything else, because why would I? I'm perfectly fine on my own, right? And so, I was about 14 when things kind of started. And when the Lord wants you to start following Him, it might be subtle at first, but it becomes a tsunami at a certain point. And in more ways than one. And how that started is, people would just start coming up to me and just start challenging me on my beliefs. Like, I'd get that occasionally, and I would seek it out a lot. But when I was about 14, people would start coming to me. Like, they knew who I was, they knew I was an atheist, and they would come to me to debate. And it didn't really shake me very much, because I would just combat it. I'd be like, I don't need all your myths and your 1,000-year-old book. Okay? I started wrestling at that time, and the coach was a very pronounced Christian and would not overly do it because he was in a public school, but would incorporate God a lot throughout that. So that started to do that. And then when we would drive to various tournaments that were farther away, and we'd just get in vans instead of a bus, a lot of times I'd be stuck with him, and then so we would spend the entire drive there, much to the chagrin of everyone else in the vehicle, and the entire drive back debating religion. And this would continue for months. And at the end of that school year, I was a sophomore by this point, he had challenged me because I was known for taking very large books and reading them very quickly. because I was that nerd that would be in the corner with the book and not talk to anyone. So he challenged me to see how long it would take me to read the Bible. And at first I was like, nah, I don't need to read that. I got science books. I have, my fiction books that are more entertaining than your crusty old leather documents, And then other people would start coming out. One that really sticks out to me. His father would come to a lot of the tournaments and the meets, and we were talking one day, and he challenged me. And in a really unique way, he said if I didn't believe that I should pray to God and ask him to prove that he exists. And I just asked him, why would I do that if I don't even believe it exists? Why would I waste my time? And he said, if you do that, God will prove that he exists, but not in the way you think. And that really interested me, so I asked him why. And what he told me is that it won't come through some miracle. You will just have people start dying in your life unexpectedly. And as much as I didn't believe any of that, I never once thought about doing that. There's something in me was like, that is a bad idea. Even though I didn't really believe him that would happen, it stuck with me. And I never challenged that. So I feel like it would be a disservice to you just be like, well, I was an atheist, and then I learned some stuff, and now I'm a Christian. So I'm going to kind of go through with some of the more arguments in depth. So I'm not going to make this too long because I don't want this to be school again. But we are going to be doing some stuff. I'm going to need Leora up here. All right, go ahead, Melvin. So, your probability, it's your number of desired outcomes over the number of possible odds. So if you have a coin flip, you have heads or tails. There's 2, so it's 1 and 2. Yep. And the next one. So then same with the 6 die. If I want to roll 6, I have 1 and 6. Pretty simple. And then scientific notation. Some of you may know this. And I didn't do the little letters because it might be hard to read. But if you have 10 to the 10th power, it is 10 with 10 zeros behind it. Everybody follow me so far? Go ahead.
You have 11 zeros there. Oh, 10, okay.
10 with 10.
I see the same thing.
Now, when you're looking at this number, you might think, well, 10 to the 20th would be double, but that's incorrect, because every 0 you add and every 1 you go up there, it's 10 times more. And that's important, because we're going to get into some big numbers. They may not seem very big, but they are. Go ahead. And then, to determine an event that's impossible, they range a bit, and a lot of these numbers I'm going to go over range, so I kind of took the middle of the road, but it's about 10 to the 75th power, so it's a 10 with 75 zeros behind it. So if that odds, it will never happen. Doesn't matter how many times you try it, it will not. It's that unlikely. Everybody following so far? Go ahead. Alright, so probability of just some things happening. So if you have 10 cards and you randomly shuffle them, 1 through 10, for them to come out exactly, it's 1 in 3,628,000. And then Leora is going to have some fun here. She's going to shuffle this while we're talking. And I want her to get all 52 in order. Because that's not quite impossible. 75 is impossible, and that's only 68. So, we'll let her do that, and she'll let us know when she has all of our cards shuffled in order. And then, so an amino acid, biology is just one of the building blocks of life. They've calculated the odds to be about 1 in 10 to the 164th power. So, well over double the 1 in 75th when you're going by the numbers on there. And again, that's 75 zeros to 164 zeros behind. So you're not close. Go ahead. And then a minimally complex cell. So you're not talking like one of your skin cells or your brain cells or something. You're talking like a single-celled amoeba. Very basic. That's got a chance of 1 in 10 to 650th power. And then I put human because that's, we're human and we care about us. But this goes for any complex life, whether you're talking about a tree, a worm, a dinosaur. It's about 1 in 10 to 400,000. So it's the equivalent to winning the Powerball every day for 15 billion years in a row. Okay? So, good luck on that. And then, you know, your, what's the word? Secular scientists say the universe is about 15 million years old. And if we're assuming that's true, there is 10 to the 18th power seconds that have passed in 15 billion years. So, that's it.
Yeah, it's a big number.
Yeah, it is a big number, but then it kind of puts a lot of this into perspective. So even if you randomly generated your entire DNA sequence once every second, you are not close. And then the total number of atoms, which is the smallest single particle, there are 10 to the 80th power approximately in the universe. So again, like you're not close to these numbers. Just to give you ideas how enormous they are. And then I painstakingly typed out, this is 650 zeros. And then way up here, there's a 1. Okay? And we would need another 615 slides to get 400,000 zeros. I did not type out another 615 slides. So, again, just probability. So this is a very nice picture of our wedding. And it has almost 16 million pixels. And I went to AI and I was like, hey, I want you to generate me a random image with 16 million pixels. And it spit out these. I'm not sure why, but that's what it gave me. As you can tell, not close to our wedding picture. Oh, there you go. Okay, so then evolution. You know, they're like, over time, we just kind of mutate, and the good ones, you know, they pass along through generations, and the bad ones, well, they just die out and they don't pass on. Truthfully, they're extremely rare, and they're usually more harmful than they are helpful.
I keep hitting the end button. I'm so sorry.
So you may have seen this in the news a couple of years ago. It's the Divers mutation. It's an extremely rare mutation, mostly among the Baju people. They're in the Philippines. And the headlines always say that this tribe can hold their breath underwater for 15 minutes or 13 minutes, which isn't accurate to start with. The evidence for that is one guy who saw a camera and claimed that. The longest timed was about 3 to 5 minutes, which is still an incredibly long time. And the reasoning for that is they have a much larger spleen, which holds oxygen-rich blood, and when the body needs it, it can release it into your bloodstream. So, people with this mutation suffer from a bunch of side effects. So, memory loss, Parkinson's disease, dyskinesia, is that pronouncing that right, Abby? Maybe? Which is involuntary erratic movements of the hands, legs, torso, etc. Striatal degeneration, which is a neurological disorder that impairs motor development, sleep apnea, breathing problems, and ironically a sensitivity to carbon dioxide. So, breathing. You know, you get a little bit longer breathing time, and this wasn't even the full list. I just picked some, and the full list was 4 times longer than that. So they are not great. And then all of the real mutations that we know of are not really true mutations in that we didn't exist. They are just hereditary and have come out more in different groups. Like the spleen, you have DNA sequences to have various sized spleens, and it depends on your chromosomes that you get when you're birthed, or well, conceived, to determine the size of that. So it's already in the genetic code, it's just how it comes out. Now, is the Bible accurate? Can we rely on the Bible? This was something that kind of blew me away. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were found between 225 BC to 50 AD, which is before Jesus was around. And so that proves that the prophecies about him were written before he was. So they didn't write them after all the events occurred to match up. And then, I'm not going to go over this entire graph, but I just kind of want to pick out, no scientist is going to tell you that these are unreliable. And, you know, so our earliest copies, and then when they were written, and the time gap between that. So when the original author first wrote it, the earliest copy that we have in the time gap. And you'll see, 400 years is the lowest for most of these, and then most are 1300, 1300, 1300, 750 years. And then number of copies, the Iliad is the outlier at 640, but then you have 8, 8, 7, and then, there's a 10 and a 20. And then we get to the Bible. So for the New Testament, most of the Gospels we have are 50 years after they were originally written, and we have the entire New Testament 225 years, which is closer than all of these by half at least. And then the number of copies we have blows it out of the water. We have 5,000 plus copies as we're finding more all the time. So this is not close, but we will question whether we know it's accurate, but we won't bother with a lot of these other historical texts. Some other historical evidence. All historians, whether Christian or secular, agree that Jesus was a real person, and they all agree that he was a Jew, and he had a group of followers, and he ministered to that area for about 3 years, was executed by Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius Caesar, or Julius Caesar. And what's interesting is, again, no one will disagree that Tiberius ruled Rome during the era that we think he did. But he's only written about by 4 people. And the earliest manuscripts we have of that are around 900 AD. And we only have a handful that exist. And all 4 of them have very conflicting testimonies of his life, his personality, and things that he did. And the only contemporary, so someone who wasn't in Julius's direct circle, Velleius, his manuscript is dated at 1500 AD. So about 1400 years after Caesar had passed. Where we have about 30 contemporary authors who wrote about Jesus either during Jesus' life or shortly after. And that's not including, the various disciples. Those are people who were not directly involved with Jesus. So, again, no one's going to argue that Caesar didn't exist. So, just some information. That should be the end, right? Okay. Any questions on that? I know that was kind of fast. I didn't want to go too long. Yeah, go ahead.
The amount of copies or pages for the New Testament, how high would that be if it was stacked up on each other?
I have no idea. That I don't know. But that is a good question. Any other questions? Yeah.
It'd be about 5 of these Bibles.
5 of them?
About 5 of them, because my Bible's about 1,000 pages.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that's also true.
did you ever see your parents again, like both of them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a story for another time. If you want, ask me about it outside of this, and I will tell you all the details you want to know about that. Yeah, go ahead.
How long did you know him for?
How long did I know Tim for? So I knew Tim as a delivery driver for Denelli's. And I would always get excited whenever we ordered pizza and insist that I got the door. Because I don't remember what we'd ever talk about, but I always just enjoyed talking with Tim when he'd deliver pizza. Yeah.
Has Leora found the secret shuffle?
No, she's still going. But she'll get there, it's not impossible.
You got what?
I got 3 games in a row.
And for those who don't know, who is Tim?
So Tim, he founded Conquest 13 years ago. He was involved with Northwoods Campus Outreach. He formed a school at the Radisson Free Evangelical Church. He worked at the Hazel Private School up in Hayward. We'll hear a lot more about Tim tonight once we hit our slideshow open mic. Yeah.
I don't know. So, have you ever learned to play an instrument?
I learned to play the recorder and the flute. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
So, if I understood correctly from all that,
Yeah.
it sounds like what you're saying is that there's really no, like the science of math really strongly points towards the improbability or impossibility of like a Big Bang.
So the Big Bang is different. I didn't
Yeah,
learn the
okay,
Big Bang.
well-
I just went to do like evolution and that more. The Big Bang, if you want my opinion, I think the Big Bang was a real event. And I'm going to reference you to,
Genesis 2.
yeah. Let's see. I just want to open the first page. So you have, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And the key that I want to point out there is, and then God said. Okay, the Big Bang, what that is that there was a point that was infinitely depth with mass and infinitely hot or had an infinite amount of energy, and then everything sprang from that. And if you want my opinion, you could believe this or not, but I would argue that that point is God's mouth, that God spoke everything into existence, and from that is the Big Bang. Yeah.
I got two questions. One,
Yeah.
what was the big turning point that led you to believe in Jesus?
We'll get there. Your
Okay.
question?
And the two, I'm going to be really stupid with this.
Go ahead.
If the Big Bang came out of nothing and then went boom, where did God come from?
So, I don't have a good answer for that, I'll be honest.
It's okay. I did it on purpose.
No,
meant to be
I don't have a good
fair.
answer for that. So, I am going to go over a little bit of Bible with you. Just real quick. Because like I said, I was challenged to read the Bible, and as I was leaving high school, I decided to take up my wrestling coach on this, and I asked him which translation, and he recommended an NIV. So, and I have a CSB with me right now, so this might be a bit different from what you're used to hearing, but I think you'll know all of these. So we have in Matthew, I think we'll all know this, right? So,
Matthew chapter what?
chapter 8, verse 23. I'm going to go quick, so if you want to follow, go ahead, but this won't be too long. So, chapter 8, verse 23. As he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But Jesus kept sleeping. So the disciples came and woke him up, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to die." He said to them, "Why are you afraid, you of little faith?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds, and there was a great calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him." And you're going to see a common theme. A big belief that I had before really reading the Bible and understanding what it actually said is that Jesus was just a very fancy con man. Okay? I didn't write down the reference to it, but in one of the Gospels, there's a spot where a magician actually comes up to Jesus and offers him money for his secret, because that was an extremely common practice, where magicians would sell secrets to each other, and then they'd go to various towns and perform, magic, right? Mostly just illusions. And so Jesus rebukes him, but that's what I thought of Jesus. And you'll see a common theme. So he gets out and then just yells at the storm, and it just stops. Okay? Okay, so this is just single verse, and this stood out to me. So we have Matthew 10:42. "And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones, because he is a disciple, truly I tell you, he will never lose his reward." And what really spoke out to me as an atheist reading the Bible is he never really demanded that everybody treat him or his disciples in a particular way. And a lot of times he says, if they reject you, you shake off the dust from your sandals and you leave, right? If somebody slaps you, you turn the other cheek, kind of thing. And I never really knew that. And again, that might seem silly, but things that really spoke to me. And this is just a cup of cold water, and he's taking time to say that would be a huge thing, right? Matthew 11, verse 25. Here we go. Okay. "At that time, Jesus said, 'I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, because this was your good pleasure. All things have been entrusted to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son desires to reveal it. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.'" And when I read that for the first time, I couldn't tell you in words what I felt, but I just felt a very peace and stillness that I couldn't explain rationally at that point. And it freaked me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. on from there. This is Matthew 15:29. Moving on from there, Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee. He went up on a mountain and sat there, and large crowds came to him, including the lame, the blind, the crippled, those unable to speak, and many others. And what spoke to me there is, he didn't minister, he didn't go to the rich people and really minister. He didn't go to the Pharisees, he went to the people who needed him. They put them at his feet, and he healed them. So the crowd was amazed when they saw those unable to speak talking, the crippled restored, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they gave glory to the God of Israel. And he didn't stop to just heal a couple and then move on with the rest of his day. He healed all of them. I know, this seems silly, but these were mind-blowing things, reading this for the first time. Matthew 18:10. See to it that you don't despise one of these little ones, because I tell you that in heaven their angels continually view the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If someone has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, won't he leave the 99 on the hillside and go search for the stray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over that sheep more than the 99 that did not go astray. In the same way, it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones perish. And the Bible that I had bought at the time, it wasn't a study Bible, but it had a few articles, and that was one of the few ones that really explained that it wasn't just saying, it wasn't about sheep, it was about us as humans, and that it doesn't matter which one of us goes astray, he will leave them to come get us, that he's very individual with us. And that really, when you research other religions, like Greek mythology or Roman, there isn't any of that. It's usually a lot of mass slaughter, and you have to please the gods or they will smite you with everything they have, right? And it's something I've never found in any other religion that I've ever researched. All right, moving all the way to John. John chapter 2. On the third day, a wedding took place in the Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, they don't have any wine. What does this have to do with you and me, woman? Jesus asked. My hour has not yet come. Do whatever he tells you, his mother told his servants. Now 6 stone water jugs have been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. Fill the jars with water, Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the head waiter. And they did. When the head waiter tasted the water, after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told them, everyone sets out the fine wine first, then after people are drunk, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now. Jesus did this, the first of his signs. Okay. That was one I was actually familiar with. I was actually familiar with Jesus turning water into wine. And I didn't know any of the context. So again, this is just a spot where I'm like, you know, I knew he was at a wedding, so it's like, you're dealing with a bunch of drunk people, how hard is it to get drunk people to believe things? And my father was an alcoholic, so I had a little experience with that. And I'll leave that there. John 11:38. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Remove the stone, Jesus said. I think, anybody not know what this is yet? Yeah, everybody knows. Martha, the dead man's sister, told him, Lord, there is already a stench because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you heard me. I know that you always hear me, but because of this crowd standing here, I said this so that they may believe you sent me. After he said this, he shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, bound hand and foot with linen strips and with his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to him, unwrap him and let them go. Now, there are a couple of key points. Little history fact if you didn't know. For many years, it was customary that when someone died, they would attach a string to their finger and then run it up and out of the grave, and there would be a bell on top. Does anyone know why?
In case they were alive.
Yeah, because sometimes people get drunk or various things, and they would appear dead, so they would bury them, and then bury them alive by mistake. So they started tying bells to people's fingers, so if they woke up in the coffin, they could ring the bell and they'd have somebody at the graveyard listening for bells to then go dig this person up before they suffocated. I don't know the success rate, but they would only keep that person on there for about a day. And so Lazarus was there for 3 days, which, again, it's important because that shows that he was dead. He was in this tomb for 3 days, no food, no water, nothing. He was dead. And yet, with just a very simple come out, Lazarus rose. So, again, you know Jesus couldn't have had any trickery there. He was out of town when he passed, and the time length just shows that. All right. So, everybody following with me so far?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm reading all this, and after high school, I started a program. It's called Upward Bound, and so it's a program designed to get more kids into college. And so a part of that program is we'd visit various college campuses throughout the year. And this summer, we'd spend 6 weeks, and we'd actually go and stay at a campus. So we'd stay at UW Stout in Menominee. We did that for 5 weeks. We were there Monday through Friday, and we'd go home on the weekends. So, second time doing this. And at this point, in my own life, I was very depressed. I'm reading about God, reading the Bible, talking to people about Jesus and all that. Didn't really believe it still. And I was battling with some personal demons. And does anyone know what this is, right here? What is this? Yeah. What is it?
Silicone ring?
It is a silicone ring. And why do I have it on this finger?
Oh, you're married.
Yes, I am married to that wonderful lady over there that God has blessed me with, right? And so, looking back on this seems really silly and really stupid. And I kind of feel dumb whenever I go back to this. But I was very depressed. I was, 15, depressed, and thinking that I would never get married, never have a girlfriend, because at this point in my life, I'd never had a girlfriend, never been kissed, none of that. Okay, so I was depressed. And so I did what a lot of depressed boys who don't think they'll ever think they'll get a girlfriend did, is I had a girl that I was crushing on at the Upward Bound program. I was bound and determined that I was going to get her on a date with me. Okay? And I'm not going to go into all of the very cringy things, but it didn't go well. Okay? And it led to a penultimate spot where it was a Friday night, we're at this formal dance, and I'm trying to get her to have a dance with me. And her and these few other girls, they go in the bathroom, and they come out crying. And I asked one of them what's going on, and they told me that this girl I'd been crushing on so hard was pregnant. Not by me, that needs to say. And it just crushed me, because not only was I not going to have her, somebody else had her, and it was just crushing. And so we went back to our rooms that night, and I don't remember why, but the guy that I was staying with in the dorm room, he was gone for that period. So I'm alone in this dorm room, just wallowing in sorrow. And believe this or not, but this is what I experienced. I'm lying in bed, and I had just a razor blade to shave with, so nothing like crazy. But it was in the dresser drawer, and I could feel it. And I can't really describe the feeling other than it was like pulling me, like calling out to me, not with words, but this sensation of come to me. And I could just see in my head, or just slitting my wrists and bleeding out. And just that feeling of, just come to me. All that pain will be over. And I sat there, and I couldn't tell you how long that I just felt this pulling and pulling. And I still didn't really believe in God or in Jesus or any of that. But what I knew is that it was, I needed that change or I was going to die. And I made the decision, I got on my knees and I prayed and I just said, Lord, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, I need you right now. Come into my life. And when I'd finished praying, I felt a weight that I didn't know existed just fall and crumble. Like nothing I could describe. I felt infinitely lighter, like I would float away. And that calling and that beckoning was just gone. And I wasn't like healed instantly. When I went to bed shortly after that. When I woke up, I was still very depressed. Depressed that when we went home for that weekend, I didn't come out of my room. I just was very depressed and wallowed in my sorrow in my room and I read the Bible and I started praying it. Started really praying. And depressed to the point of I had no appetite. And not like I'm not hungry. I would have a plate of food, some of my favorite food, and it would be like revolting to me. And I was at that state for a week. For a week, I did not eat anything until the Lord had worked in me through Scripture and helped me to start healing on that process. And that was a long process. And like I just got married, a little over a year ago. Our anniversary is the 28th of May. So this was a very long process. The relationships were a very big struggle for me as a Christian. But that is really where I broke and needed something else. And through that is when I had started going to church. I'd gone a couple times to a youth group on a dare, because that's how you get kids to youth group, I guess. You just dare them into going. And so I just went to the church at that youth group, and I just showed up there, and didn't see anyone else I knew. They were out of town for something. But I saw the youth group leader, Robert Ortman, and so just went over and sat with him, had no idea what to expect. And, we sang, and I don't remember what the sermon was about. It was something in John, because they were starting from the New Testament through. And I was like, oh, so that's what a church service is. He's like, yeah, that's about it. Sometimes we do this and that. And so I started going to church on a regular basis. I started going to youth group actually on a regular basis. I read the entire Bible in about 7 or 8 months. Would not recommend reading it straight through, because I started in Matthew, read through the whole New Testament except Revelation, and then started in Genesis and read all the way through Malachi and then hit Revelation. I wouldn't recommend that strategy. Chronicles is very good stuff, but it's quite the slog to read through. But I did it at 7, 8 months, and I didn't understand a lot of it. And shortly after I'd come to Christ, the youth group that I was going to had mentioned that Tim was hosting the summer camp, and when I saw him next at my house, I asked him about it, and he gave me a pamphlet. So that's how I really got to know Tim, was through that. And he was a huge mentor for me, because I had, as an atheist, a ton of questions. I probably harassed Tim more than he'd ever been harassed in his life with questions. Okay? And I memorized a ton of scripture. The first year, and I'm the reason why we don't do this anymore, why we have a hard limit. We had 2 chapters, and then I memorized another 3 that we stapled sheets of paper to verify on the back. And then after that, that was done. So you can thank me for that rule. What rule? That you can only memorize in your book, and that's it. So, but yeah, that's how I came to Christ. Any questions at this point? Anything at all? No dumb questions, yeah.
The week-long fast, is that how you got really skinny?
No. I wrestled freshman year at 103 pounds. 103. So I was always skinny. Yeah.
How heavy are you now?
About 165. Varies a little bit.
It's probably all muscle.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Anyone? Not about my way, yeah. Yeah.
So, let's express happy early anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
And then second of all, thank you for sharing your tips.
Welcome. I was glad to do it. If any of you do have questions about anything I shared or want advice or to talk about anything in your life, we have a whole group of staff over there, and I would personally love to sit down and chat with any of you. And I know last week I gave my number up to a couple people. My wife did as well. So if you're wanting that, come find me. I will gladly give that to you. I'm sure other staff would be open to that as well. But we're all here for you. We're here to have fun and all that, but this is here to show God and to learn about Him and to draw closer